The Fable Archive, Record 3, Case File, The Garden of Thorns, Primary Subject, Belle, Designation debated, subject may be two merged entities. Secondary subject, the beast, taxonomy indeterminate. Status, record growth observed. Thorn patterns repeat. Archive staff advised not to touch blooming items. Archivist warning, story exhibits signs of self-cultivation. Welcome to Twilight Fables. The record begins with the faint scent of roses. Not the gentle kind placed in vases, but the sharp, resinous smell of wild thorns after rain. Archivists report that every time this file is opened, the scent intensifies. Several insist the pages feel textured, as if the parchment itself is sprouting under skin. The archivist's handwriting grows jagged beyond this point, but the transcription remains intact, mostly. Belle's story rarely begins where people think it does. Not with a monster, not with a castle, not with a sacrifice. It begins with debt. A debt owed by her father to something that was not truly human. The village of Varright sat along an old trade road that no longer led anywhere. Caravans stopped coming generations ago, leaving behind a place with shuttered windows and villagers who spoke in lowered voices when the wind brushed through the hedges. The land was quiet, yet the silence felt maintained, as if a heavy hand pressed down upon it to keep it that way. Belle noticed it long before she learned its cause. She watched the thorn vines coiled at the forest's edge, growing a little closer each year. They crept in spirals, like script trying to write itself across the ground. When she was small, her father told her the vines were harmless, some old blight from before their time. But when she asked why they never died in winter, he couldn't answer. She grew into a young woman with a sharp mind and an undying curiosity. She read anything she could find, books, scraps, letters left behind in abandoned trunks. She wanted truth, not superstition. But in Varright, truth had been buried deliberately. Her father's trading business failed slowly and then all at once. Goods spoiled on the road, customers turned away, contracts dissolved with no explanation. Belle suspected sabotage. Her father suspected himself, his age, his exhaustion. But the truth revealed itself the night the storm hit, the worst the village had seen since the last culling. That word, culling, was one Belle had never heard spoken aloud. It appeared only in the margins of a water-damaged ledger she once found under a broken floorboard. A culling every generation, it read. Tribute required. Compliance ensures growth remains contained. Growth. That same night, her father returned home soaked to the bone, wild-eyed, carrying a rose that looked as though it had been carved from living crimson light. The petals pulsed faintly, drinking in the storm's electricity. Belle stared at it, unable to speak. Her father dropped it on the table as though it had burned him. "He wants payment," he whispered. "Who?" "I don't know what he is, but he found me. He knows the debt is due. I tried to leave the forest path and it..." His voice caught. It followed. The rose stopped pulsing as though it understood it was being discussed. Belle reached toward it instinctively. Her father caught her wrist. "No, it isn't for you." But he didn't say who it was for. The story fragmented after this point. Archivists note that portions of Belle's early recollections have thorn-like lines creeping through them, as though scratching out alternate versions of events. The following reconstruction relies on cross-referencing multiple surviving passages. Belle's father explained that when he wandered off the path during the storm, something enormous moved in the dark, not lumbering, not clumsy, a deliberate presence that pressed against the boundaries of the forest. And then, a voice, not human, not beast, something between. It told him he owed a debt that his bloodline had been avoiding for too long, and that he had taken something that didn't belong to him. But her father carried nothing except the rose. He insisted he had not plucked it. The forest had placed it in his hand. The next morning, he vanished. Belle found the windows open, the wind cold, the house strangely silent. Tracks, deep claw marks, pressed into the earth outside. They did not lead into the forest. They led out. No one in the village tried to help. When Belle begged them for answers, they turned their faces away. One elderly woman muttered something about the thorn garden. Another whispered that the last culling had been 62 years ago. Belle realized then that she had been shielded from more than superstition. She had been protected from knowledge, dangerous knowledge that everyone else already feared. She searched her home for clues and found, hidden beneath the loose floorboard where she once discovered the ledger, a sealed letter addressed to her. It was her father's handwriting. "Belle, if you are reading this, I have failed you. He has taken more than he was owed. I went to pay the price, but the forest will not release me. The rose is your key. Do not follow me unless you are prepared to bargain with something older than mercy. If I do not return, burn the rose. Do not let it bloom." Belle pressed the letter to her chest. Her hands trembled. She looked at the rose lying on the table. It had begun to open, not the soft unfolding of a natural flower, but a slow widening, like an eye studying her. She did not burn it. Instead, she wrapped it in cloth and stepped into the forest alone. The forest path was wrong. Trees that had been bare the day before hung heavy with leaves that whispered when she approached. Their shadows bent in ways that suggested they were observing her, not merely blocking the sun. She followed her father's tracks, though they twisted unnaturally, as if he had been pulled rather than walked. Her breath quickened as she neared the place villagers always avoided, the old estate ruins, swallowed by vines. The entrance was arched stone, cracked and half buried, yet the thorn vines had arranged themselves into a shape resembling a doorway. Belle stepped through before she could reconsider. Inside, the world changed. The sky darkened, though no clouds moved above. The ground felt soft and alive beneath her boots. The vines grew thicker here, spiraling into patterns almost resembling script. In the center of the garden sat a ruined manor, its windows dark, its walls leaning, its doors covered in thorns that moved gently, as if breathing. Belle felt the rose twitch inside her bag. Then she heard him. A low growl. Not entirely hostile, but undeniably territorial. "You should not have come." Belle froze. The voice echoed through the garden, rippling through the vines as though the plants were carrying it. "Where is my father?" she demanded. Silence followed, deep and cold. Then the figure stepped from behind the vines, massive, horned, fur matted with shadow, not a creature of fairy tale charm, but a silhouette carved from the dark itself. Eyes like molten amber stared at her, bright with something ancient. Belle's heart pounded, yet she stood her ground. "I came to bargain." The beast tilted his head. "You brought the rose." She nodded. He approached with slow, deliberate steps. The vines receded for him, curling like obedient beasts. When he was close enough that she could see the faint glow pulsing beneath his chest, like roots branching under skin, he extended a clawed hand. "Give it to me." Belle reached into her bag. The rose was warm now, too warm. She hesitated. "My father," she said. "Release him first." The beast's expression shifted, something like regret or hunger passing over his features. "I cannot release what the garden keeps. The debt bound him. It binds you now as well." She stepped back. "You lied to him." "I never lie," the beast replied. "I only offer what is owed." Belle's breath caught. "What do you want from me?" He looked at her as though the answer were obvious. "The garden has chosen you." Belle realized the vines had begun curling around her ankles, not to trap her, but to steady her, as if welcoming her. She pulled away instinctively, but the thorns didn't cut. They grazed her skin with unnatural gentleness. "This place," she whispered. "It's alive." "It is hungry," the beast corrected, "and it cultivates what it desires." Belle clutched the rose. "What happens if I give this to you?" The beast's expression hardened. "The garden changes, you change. The debt is paid." Belle didn't like the way he said "you change," as though he had seen it happen many times before. "Will I be trapped, like my father?" she asked. "No. Your father belongs to the roots now. You would belong to me." The vines shivered at his words, vibrating with a thrill she couldn't understand. Something in the garden wanted her deeply, not for sustenance, not for sacrifice, something else, something binding. She shook her head. "I want proof he's alive." The beast turned slowly toward the manor. "You will see." The vines parted, forming a narrow path. Belle followed reluctantly, every sense on high alert. Each step was accompanied by subtle movement beneath the soil. She felt watched by every petal, every thorn. Inside the manor, the air was heavy with the scent of decaying roses. The walls were covered in murals, paintings of women through different eras, each holding a rose identical to the one Belle carried. Their eyes were scratched out. Belle ran her fingers over one portrait. The name beneath it had been overwritten so many times it was illegible. But the face, what remained of it, felt familiar. Almost like... She pulled her hand back sharply. "Who were they?" she asked. "Those the garden chose," the beast replied. "Some resisted, some accepted. All are remembered." Belle gazed around uneasily. The portrait seemed to pulse at the edges, as if being repaired by unseen hands. "And my father?" she pressed. The beast opened a door at the end of the hall. Light poured through it, soft, golden, almost peaceful. Belle stepped inside. Her father stood in the center of the room, perfectly still, as if listening to a sound she could not hear. He looked unhurt, younger even, but his eyes were glazed with rose-red light, and thorn vines wrapped around his wrists like bracelets. Belle rushed toward him, but the beast caught her arm. "He is not harmed," he said. "The garden preserves what it claims." "Father," Belle whispered, reaching for him. Her father turned his head toward her slowly, his lips parted. For a moment, she thought he might speak. Instead, she heard the vines whisper. Belle stepped back, trembling. "What did you do to him?" she cried. "Nothing," the beast said softly. "He simply became what the garden required." She stared at her father. Alive, yes, but hollow. The rose in her hand pulsed hard as though reacting to his condition. She turned to the beast. "You said giving this to you pays the debt." "Yes." "Then take it." He reached out. But before she could place the rose in his palm, the petals unfurled in a violent shudder. Roots sprouted from its stem, wrapping around Belle's wrist. The beast stepped back sharply, growling. "It has chosen," he murmured, faster than expected. Belle cried out as the rose embedded itself into her skin, not painfully, but possessively. The beast looked at her with something like awe. "You are becoming the garden." Belle staggered backward. The vines in the manor twisted eagerly toward her. The portraits vibrated, their empty eyes glowing faintly. Belle stared at the beast, horrified. "What did you do to me?" He bowed his head. "What I was created to do," he answered. "Cultivate." The garden trembled beneath their feet. Belle looked down. Her shadow was no longer shaped like her. It rippled, petal-shaped, thorned, growing. She turned and ran. The vines pursued her, not to trap but to follow, to connect. She burst out of the manor and back into the garden, gasping for air. The sky darkened further. The thorns leaned toward her, eager, watchful. Belle collapsed near the entrance, clutching her wrist where the rose had rooted itself. The beast stood behind her, silent. "Your father paid the first half of the debt," he said. "You are the second." Belle forced herself to her feet, shaking, furious, terrified. "No," she said, "I won't become this." The beast almost smiled. "You already are." The vines rustled. Belle looked toward the path back to the village, but it had sealed with thorns. The garden had closed behind her. She was inside the story now, whether she wanted to be or not. The rose on her wrist opened fully, revealing a faint golden glow within. The archivists note that at this point, portions of the manuscript became warm to the touch. Some copies sprouted small thorn patterns along the margins. The text continues despite these distortions. Belle steadied her breath. She forced herself to look into the beast's amber eyes. "If the garden chose me," she said slowly, "then maybe I get to choose what I become." The beast's expression flickered, uncertain for the first time. The garden reacted to her words. The thorns bent inward, listening. Belle took a step forward, then another. The beast watched her closely, as if re-evaluating a long-held assumption. "You cannot resist its call forever," he warned. "I don't intend to resist," Belle whispered. "I intend to change the ending." The garden stirred, confused by her defiance. Belle faced it fully, raising her rooted wrist. The rose pulsed in agreement. The record ends here, edges curling inward as if resisting transcription. The next section appears to grow from the page when opened again. From the moment the beast led Belle through the iron archway and into the hidden heart of the manor grounds, she felt as though she had stepped into the lung of some vast living creature. The air was heavier here, warmer than it should have been, and it smelled faintly of roses and faintly of rot, as though the two scents were struggling for dominance and neither would yield. The sky above the garden looked wrong too, darker somehow, as though thick clouds clung directly to the tops of the hedges, filtering light into a perpetual twilight that left no shadows in the usual sense, only undulating pools of gloom. The thorns lining each wall looked sharpened by intention rather than nature, curving in unexpected spirals that suggested not growth but design. "This," the beast said, his voice low and solemn, "is the true soul of the castle." Belle wanted to ask what that meant, but the vines beside her foot stirred before she could speak, coiling subtly, like cats arching their backs with silent purpose. She swallowed her questions and followed the beast deeper in, trying not to notice that the ground seemed to pulse faintly with each step she took. The further they went, the larger the roses became. At first the size of open hands, then dinner plates, then monstrous blossoms as wide as shields. Their petals looked velvet soft, but glistened like they were coated in dew that was not dew at all. The thorns on their stems were curved like hooked teeth, some tipped with a faintly glowing red that suggested something almost sentient. "Do they bite?" Belle muttered before she could stop herself. "Only when they're hungry," the beast replied. She waited for him to say he was joking. He didn't. The path curved inward like a spiral, drawing them toward the center, each twist of the garden seeming to rearrange itself subtly in real time, as if the ground itself were aware of her presence. A strange humming vibration slipped through the air, subtle but constant, like the garden itself was whispering beneath its breath, brushing threads of thought against hers that were almost unintelligible. Belle hugged her arms close. "Why bring me here?" she asked. "Because the curse began here," the beast said, "and it will end here." Belle opened her mouth, but before she could ask anything more, the vines ahead parted of their own accord, revealing a clearing containing the oldest rosebush Belle had ever seen. Its trunk had thickened into a warped, knotted mass, resembling ribs twisted around a heart. The bark darkened and ridged as if fossilized into a living cage. Its branches curled in spirals, every inch covered in thorns long as daggers and glinting faintly in the unnatural light. At its apex bloomed a single enormous rose the color of bruised dusk. It pulsed faintly with each beat, like a heart. Belle's breath faltered. "That is alive." "Yes," the beast whispered, "and it knows you're here." The great rose shifted, its petals tightening, then opening again, as though taking a slow, deliberate breath. Belle stepped backward instinctively, and the vines across the ground moved with her, mirroring her retreat, not with malice, but a patient watchfulness that made her skin crawl. "Don't," the beast warned, raising a clawed hand. "It thinks you're prey when you run." Belle froze. The rose's massive petals unfurled further, revealing a center darker than shadow itself, as though it led somewhere deep and bottomless. A faint sound, almost human, exhaled from within, a sigh or a moan or a word unfinished, carrying a resonance that tugged at something deep within her mind. "Is this the curse?" Belle whispered. "No," the beast said. "This is the curse's source." Belle stared at him. "But that means—" "Yes," the beast said. "The rose is older than me, older than this castle, older than the kingdom. It chose my family generations ago. We fed it, protected it, and in return it gave us power." The admission came heavy, reluctant, but it punished us when we grew greedy. He lowered his gaze. Belle understood. It turned you into itself, he murmured, a thing of thorns. The pulsing rose quivered, and the vines around Belle's ankles tightened a fraction, not enough to restrain, but enough to remind her they very easily could. Then the rose spoke, not with a voice, not truly, but with a sound like 100 layered whispers brushing against her mind. Belle. Belle jerked, heart pounding. It said my name. It knows all names, the beast said. It knows all desires. Belle felt the whisper again, threading through her mind deeper this time. A promise, a temptation, a vow. I can give you what you ache for. Belle grit her teeth. She had not told a soul, not her father, not the villagers, not even the beast, what she wanted most. To be free of fear, to no longer bow her head to others' cruelty, to be seen not as odd or fragile or insignificant. Stop, she hissed at the whisper. The rose's darkness fluttered like a narrowing pupil. I can give you a world that bends. Belle shook her head violently, stepping closer to the beast. Make it stop. It won't, the beast said softly. Not until it's fed. She looked up at him sharply. Fed what? A piece of you. Her stomach dropped. No. The beast bowed his head. It's the only way it will let you go. The vines tightened again around Belle's feet, just slightly, but enough that her pulse stuttered. The rose loomed, its petals glistening with moisture that might have been dew or might have been something far more terrible. Belle exhaled shakily. What kind of peace? The beast's silence was answer enough. Something painful, something that left a mark. Belle's heart hammered. She wanted to run, but the vines sensed every flicker of her fear. She steadied herself, fighting for calm. Fine, she said, but not today. The rose gave a slow, shuddering pulse, as though tasting her defiance. She felt it creeping into her thoughts again, stroking them gently. You will return. Belle forced a thin, defiant smile. We'll see. The beast touched her shoulder and guided her backward step by step until they crossed the threshold of the clearing. Only then did the vines retreat, slithering back into the soil like a nest of serpents. Belle felt air return to her lungs. She didn't speak until they were safely beyond the archway again. Why show me that? She demanded. Because, the beast said slowly, you needed to know what you're truly dealing with, and because you were changing. Belle stiffened. Changing how? The beast looked at her with eyes she could not read. The rose has taken interest in you. It does not take interest lightly. Belle felt the whisper echo faintly inside her skull. Not a word this time, but a presence. Waiting. Watching, hungry. She shivered. What does that mean for me? The beast exhaled, his breath heavy as stone. It means, he said quietly, that the curse has begun to wind itself around you. Belle touched her chest instinctively. Nothing there felt different, yet. But deep beneath her skin, under her heartbeat, she sensed something faint and floral and wrong opening its first unseen petal. The garden seemed to lean toward her as she walked, every blossom turning slightly, every leaf tilting. The air itself vibrated with a gentle, almost imperceptible pulse. She noticed then that shadows in the corners of the garden did not behave naturally. They flickered independently, as if observing her from angles the eye could not easily see. She tried to steady her breath and forced herself to look around more carefully. The paths twisted unnaturally, some leading in loops, some vanishing into impenetrable walls of thorns, yet all always returned her to the rose's clearing. She realized the garden itself had memory. Every misstep, every hesitation, It recorded. Every fear, every desire, it cataloged. Belle's pulse quickened. Somewhere within the whorls of thorns, she thought she glimpsed shapes, figures crouched or suspended in the darkness, silhouettes that might have been human, but whose heads were tipped in impossible angles. Were they previous victims? Archivist notes later speculate these may have been remnants of earlier subjects, absorbed into the thorns. Belle shook her head and pressed onward. The beast followed silently, never letting her out of sight. He seemed patient, yet she caught flashes of an impatience that ran through his rigid shoulders, a hunger barely contained. He was not merely guardian here. He was servant, co-conspirator, and perhaps willing sacrifice to the garden's will. As they approached the manor, the vines began to shift again, curling and straightening as though breathing. Belle reached out instinctively to touch one, expecting sharp pain, but felt warmth instead, like the garden recognizing her touch. She recoiled, unsettled. The rose pulsed stronger with each heartbeat. Belle felt herself responding, not entirely by choice, to the garden's rhythm. Every nerve felt tuned to it. The manor doors stood before them, blackened, thick with centuries of rot and thorn, yet somehow intact. Belle hesitated. She wanted to run, but she also wanted to see what lay within. The beast's gaze met hers. "Inside," he said, "you may find what you seek, or what you dread most." Belle took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she reached for the massive doors. She pushed. They moved with surprising ease, swinging inward to reveal the shadowed interior, where light flickered faintly across walls lined with murals of roses and thorns and faces, many staring directly at her. Belle stepped into the room and felt a whisper again, closer, warmer, human in its cadence, yet undeniably alien. Belle. It came from everywhere and nowhere. She forced herself to her knees, clutching her chest, feeling the pulse of the rose through her skin, knowing it was shaping her, molding her thoughts in subtle waves, rewriting desires she hadn't realized she had. The beast watched her quietly, unblinking, the thorns along his fur shifting like quills on alert. Belle realized with sudden clarity that she was no longer merely walking into the garden. She was becoming it. And the garden, in turn, was learning to see through her eyes, hear through her ears, feel through her pulse. Somewhere, deep in the labyrinthine corridors of her mind, the archivist in her future might have warned her had she been able to comprehend it. Do not underestimate the garden. It cultivates everything it touches and remembers more than it should. Belle shivered. She rose to her feet, trembling but resolute. "I will not let it consume me," she said aloud, though her voice sounded foreign to her own ears. The rose pulsed again, slower now, as though acknowledging her defiance. The beast inclined his head slightly, as though considering her words. The vines along the walls seemed to twitch with anticipation. Belle's heartbeat synced with the rose, slow and steady, defiant. And in that fleeting moment of clarity, she understood that this was only the beginning of the dance she had unwillingly joined, a dance of roots, petals, and the cruel, watchful heart of the garden itself. The night pressed close around Belle as she ventured deeper into the manor, the air thick with a scent that was part rose, part iron, part something older and fouler that made her stomach twist. The beast followed silently, his massive form gliding like shadow, every movement precise yet unnatural, and Belle realized she had begun to notice how the thorns along his fur shifted and writhed in patterns that mimicked the garden outside, as if he were a continuation of the cursed place, rather than a separate being. She walked slowly, compelled by a mixture of fear and fascination, and the walls themselves seemed to lean closer, lined with murals of thorns and roses. Each bloom darkened to the hue of bruised dusk, petals curled inwards like fists. Faint whispers threaded through the corridors, indecipherable but persistent, slipping into her thoughts, suggesting desires she did not know she had. A shadow shifted across the floor, elongated and impossible, and Belle realized it did not belong to her or the beast. It was the garden stretching its influence inside, crawling along the stone in sinuous patterns. "Do you feel it?" the beast asked without turning his head. "The pulse?" Belle nodded, though she did not know what she was feeling. The pulse was in the air, in the walls, in her own chest, and it throbbed with a rhythm older than her own life, something alive and patient, waiting. "It learns," the beast said. "Every heartbeat, every glance, every thought, it remembers." Belle swallowed and pressed her hands to her temples, trying to steady her mind. The whisper came again, closer now, warm and insistent. "Come closer, give yourself, grow with me." She shook her head, but her legs moved forward of their own accord, guided by the subtle tug of the garden's will. In the center of the manor, the floor opened into a circular chamber, walls wrapped in twisting black roses and thorns, all pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. At the center lay the great rose from the garden, its petals spread wide, dark as night, but shimmering faintly with iridescent bruises, and Belle could feel it drawing her toward it with a gravity that was not physical, but something deeper, something older. "It wants more than a piece," she whispered, more to herself than to the beast. "It wants me." The beast inclined his head slightly, the shadows in his eyes unreadable. "It chooses what it takes," he said, "and it is patient. It will not be forced. It waits for you to understand the debt." Belle's hand trembled, hovering over her chest where the first faint bloom of influence had begun beneath her skin. She could feel it now, a tiny pulse, a petal unfurling inside her, a part of her that was already entwined with the garden's will. The whispers turned into words, clear now, though they felt wrong on her tongue. "You are mine. You will see through me. You will be whole with me." She stumbled back, pressing herself against the wall, but the murals around her shifted, the painted thorns stretching outward, crawling toward her, brushing invisible fingers along her skin. "It's inside me," she said. "I can feel it." "Yes," the beast said softly, "but that is only the beginning. The garden does not consume instantly. It cultivates, teaches, waits for willing participants. Those who resist are broken. Those who surrender are changed." Belle's chest tightened as the whispers began threading through her memories, touching her earliest fears, her smallest desires, twisting them slightly, turning them into a tapestry the rose could read. You wanted safety. You wanted freedom. You wanted to be seen. The garden knew these things, and now it offered them as temptation. Belle forced herself to stand straighter, taking a slow, deliberate breath. "I will not give you my soul willingly," she said. The rose pulsed in response, faintly, as though amused, and the vines along the chamber floor shifted, creating soft, almost musical ripples that tickled her ankles. "Do not speak as though you have choice," it whispered. Belle swallowed hard. The beast stepped forward, placing a massive hand lightly on her shoulder, and she felt the thorns along his fur press subtly into her skin, not hurting, but sending a warning. "You are already changing," he said. "The garden knows you better than you know yourself. Every choice you make is cataloged, every hesitation a step closer." Belle's mind reeled. She remembered the archivist notes she had glimpsed in the margins of older records, the ones warning that the thorns could record more than a simple action, that they could absorb memory, thought, even essence. She realized now that it was happening to her. The rose pulsed stronger. "You are mine. You are beautiful. You are beast and bloom." Belle stumbled forward again, this time drawn closer, almost involuntarily, compelled by the rhythm, the whispers, the subtle tug at her soul. Her hand hovered above her chest, over the first faint stirrings of the bloom that had begun beneath her skin. She felt it there, alive, and understood that it was both her and not her, a small part of the garden taking root in her flesh. The chamber seemed to narrow around her, walls of petals curling inward like the closing of a flower, each thrum of the rose vibrating through the stone floor, through the air, through her. Belle's vision flickered and warped. She thought she saw herself in the petals, mirrored infinitely, a version of her smiling faintly, eyes glinting with the same darkness that now pulsed in the rose. "You will grow into me," it whispered. "You will bloom into me." Belle shook her head violently, staggering backward, the chamber spinning, the beast's shadow looming over her like a wall of living darkness. "Enough," he said, and his voice echoed unnaturally, rolling through the petals like wind through hollow thorns. The rose pulsed once, sharply, and then slowed, almost contemplatively, as if taking note of his intervention. Belle fell to her knees, heart hammering, sweat cold against her skin, and realized she could no longer distinguish the garden's whispers from her own thoughts. They were intertwined now, threads of perception that could not be unraveled. "I can help you," the beast said, kneeling beside her, "but only if you are willing to accept a piece of yourself. Only then can the influence be guided rather than complete." Belle's hands trembled as she considered this. A part of her wanted to flee, to tear herself away and never look back. Another part, impossibly small but insistent, wanted to reach toward the rose, to see what it felt like to be connected, to be seen, to be something more than herself. The room pulsed with quiet expectancy, the murals along the walls seeming to lean closer, the petals of the rose quivering as though tasting the tension in the air. She realized then that the garden did not merely feed on what it took. It thrived on hesitation, on the struggle between fear and desire. Her pulse matched the rhythm of the rose, slow and deliberate, and she felt herself beginning to sway with it, involuntarily, as if the beat were a tether. Belle clenched her fists. "I will not be consumed," she whispered. The rose pulsed again, softly, and the air vibrated with a warm, intoxicating presence. The beast looked at her, eyes unreadable, and said, "You cannot fight the garden and yourself. They are now one. What you resist will resist you in turn." Belle's mind reeled, the whispers forming words and visions simultaneously. Faces she did not know, events she had never lived, all blending seamlessly with her memories. She gasped, staggering forward, but the beast steadied her. "It is a test," he murmured. "A question. Will you shape it, or will it shape you?" Belle forced herself to breathe, to feel the weight in her chest, the faint pulse beneath her skin. She realized that she had a choice, even now, even here. She could resist entirely and risk being unmade, or she could give a controlled piece, something small and deliberate, to anchor herself and guide the garden's influence. Slowly, deliberately, she pressed her hands to her chest, felt the faint pulse of the bloom beneath her skin, and whispered, "I will give you this much, but no more." The rose pulsed once sharply, as though startled, then slowed, almost contemplative, as though recognizing the bargain. The garden's influence did not recede entirely, but it shifted, its tendrils weaving around her carefully rather than blindly consuming. The beast nodded, silently approving, his fur quivering with the slow, rhythmic movement of his own embedded thorns. Belle exhaled, exhausted and trembling, and felt for the first time a measure of control. She was still bound to the garden, still touched by its pulse, but no longer entirely at its mercy. Outside, the wind whispered through the upper windows of the manor, carrying faint, distant echoes of other records she had glimpsed in the archive. The shadow of other subjects, other blooms, all catalogued, all watching. Belle knew that this was only the beginning. She was marked, changed, and bound to the garden's rhythm, yet she was also, impossibly, still herself. The beast rose, looming beside her, and together they turned to face the rose in the chamber's center. It pulsed, quiet now, as though sleeping, yet the rhythm remained, a constant heartbeat threading through walls, stone, and flesh alike. Belle touched her chest, feeling the bloom there, faint but insistent, and knew she would never be the same. The garden had chosen, and she had answered. The petals quivered once more, in anticipation of what would come next, but Belle's pulse now guided them as much as they guided her. She had made the first move, and in that decision there was a tragic, awful beauty that she could not escape. The garden would wait, it would watch, and it would grow with her, and she with it.
Thank you for joining us in the world of Twilight Fables. If you enjoyed this tale and want to hear more stories like this, please subscribe and hit the notification bell for more.